Ta-da! Yeah, kind of sad times, isn't it? Only 12 people. What's that? What's that all about, right? Epic intro. Yeah, that the intro I believe was Bruno. Bruno made the intro for us, so all praise to him. Right. Okay. So. We've done a whole bunch of theory on what's it called? Compilers, interpreters, functions of IDEs and stuff like that. So I thought I'd break it up a little bit by teaching you some programming stuff, which is going to be useful when you do your project. Now, some of you might already know this stuff. Some of you might kind of know it, but not entirely, not be entirely sure what exactly is going on. So what we're going to have a look at today is how to read and write text files in Python, and also we'll have a look at something called object serialization and why that is a very useful thing. Very useful thing. Okay, so if you could pop open PyCharm or whatever Python interpreter you are using, then we can get started. Don't worry about being late, Evie. That's all fine. Better late than never, as the vast majority of students are not actually here. So get open. I'll use the default Python editor. Well, I mean, that's cool and all, but you might want to use something a little bit more advanced just so that you've got access to things like debuggers and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to go to File, New Python file. I'm going to call it, what am I going to call it? I'm going to call it Text Files. Text Files, there we go. Call it text files. You can call it whatever you want. I'm calling mine text files. You can call it file IO. Might be a better name for it now that I've just thought of that, but hey ho. By the way, Evie, I have marked and returned your worksheet, so you should have some feedback there. VS Code doesn't run good on my laptop. Well, I mean, not that I'm shilling for PyCharm or anything, but I think it's a good editor. Right. Are you all with me? I'm going to write a program, and then you guys are going to tell me what that program does. Why don't I have any line numbers here? That's kind of weird. I can't even add... I'm not going to worry about it right now. Okay, cool. So we are gonna... How am I gonna do this? I'm gonna print out a some text. Hello, everyone. No, in fact, let's do something better. We must come to see that the end we seek. There's one line of text. Print is a society at peace with itself. Anyone know the next line? A society that can live with its conscience. Okay, so simple program. That's going to print out 3 lines of text, right? And just to prove it, Control Shift F10, boom. Now, obviously, you can either write out that same those same wise words there, or you can write whatever you want. Okay, just a program that's going to write 3 lines. I have done 3 print lines. That's not the only way that you could do it. You could do it using multiple different lines, but I'm using 3. Sorry, you could do it using a single line without the \ns in there. There is a reason for me doing it using 3 print commands, 3 separate print commands, rather than a single print command or a triple quoted string. Okay. Just out of interest, anyone know where this quote is from? Who said this? We must come to see that the end we seek is a society at peace with itself, a society that can live with its conscience. That will be a day not of the white man, not of the black man. That will be the day of man as man. Any ideas? If you don't know this, you need to read some history. It was not Nick Clegg, and it was not Donald Trump. Think of who is the opposite of Donald Trump. I'll give you a clue. It's someone who's not alive anymore. Martin Luther King. Yes, it was Martin Luther King Jr. Good. So you all understand what's going on with these lines, okay? I'm keeping it fairly simple here, right? Because this is a program which outputs stuff to the screen. Now, most of the time, output into the screen is fine. If we've got a program, we're running this program, we want input and output on our screen. But there might be times when we don't actually want it to go out to the screen. We want to create a file and save that stuff in a file. Okay? So the way that we do that is we create a file using the open command, and then we can do all sorts of things to that file. So there's 2 ways of doing this. There's the more easily understandable way, and then there's the generally better way. So I'm going to show you the more understandable way, and then I will show you the better way once you understand that, and then from that point on I'll just use the better way. Does that sound fair? So we're going to create a file, and I'm going to give it the incredibly imaginative name file. Okay, you can call it whatever you want, as long as it's it's treated as a standard variable in Python. So I'm going to call it file. File equals open. Now, bear in mind, this here, that is the name of the file as Python, the program, is going to understand it. That's not the name of the file as it appears on disk. The first argument that we have to specify in open is the name of the file which is going to be on disk. So I'm going to call mine output.txt. Again, you can call it whatever the hell you like, right? As long as you've got these quote marks around it. So I'm going to call it output.txt, and I am going to open it in mode W. What do you think that mode W is? What do you think that W stands for? I'm opening a file, I want to do something specific with it, and the specific thing that I want to do with it is called W. It is write, yes. So I've opened a file. Now there's something really important here. Whenever you open a file, you need to close it again once you are done, right? So you open a file, you do some stuff with it, and then you close that file. If you open files and you leave them open, you run the risk of data corruption, you run the risk of things not being properly written to those files. It's generally a bad idea. So one habit that I used to get into before I discovered the better way of opening files, which I haven't shown you yet, but I will show you in a minute, is once you open a file, the first thing that you should do is close that file again. File.close. Okay, we've opened the file here, we've done nothing at all, and then we've closed the file. Now this program will still do something even though we haven't actually done anything with that file. Okay, so if you type out, don't worry about these print commands here. If you just do this, file equals open output.txt, comma W, and then you do file.close, when you run that program, it won't actually do anything other than create the file output.txt if it doesn't already exist. In fact, you can see here, here's all my list of files in my project folder. When I run the program, you can see it's added output.txt. There it is. Okay, there's nothing in it, but it has created the file. Okay, so just run that program, just make sure that your file is being created properly, and then I'll show you the actual useful stuff that we can do in order to write to those files. Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes just to do that, and this is your opportunity to ask questions about either what's going on or what certain errors mean, so that I can help you fix your problems. So I'll tell you what as well, if you could just write a message in the comment down there saying yes, it works or something, so I've got some confirmation. I mean, I know there's only 15 of you here, but it would be nice to know whether it's working or not working. Tis work. Yeah, it works. Good. Okay, so when you run that if you run it again, here's the important thing. Even though that file is already created, you won't get any problems with it, because what opening a file in write mode, what it does is, if the file exists already, it will open the existing file. If the file does not already exist, opening it in write mode will create the file. Okay, the only time you should have errors is if you don't have write permission to the folder that you're trying to create the file in. Okay, so I run that again, boom. Okay, that works. Now then, once we've opened the file, we probably want to do some stuff with it, right? How do you open it in a specific place? That is a good question. What you can do is you can just put in the full path to where you want to create the file. Now I'm running Linux, so if I wanted to create it in my documents folder, I would do something like this. Home Carl, because that is my user folder. HDD documents, like that. That will create it in my documents folder. In fact, if I just test that, I shouldn't get an error. And if I just have a quick look in my documents folder, which is filled with nonsense, so I'm not going to put it on the screen, you'll have to take my word for it. Documents, let's just double check that output.txt is there. Output.txt is there, just above payslips.pdf and just below offercert.pdf. So there we go. So obviously on Windows, if you were wanting to create it on a different drive or something like that, again, you could just put in the full path. So you could do something like C:, I don't know, is it My Documents? Where do they store things in Windows these days? Something like that. That's how you would change the location there. Generally speaking, you wouldn't hard code the path in there. You'd probably have a separate variable called path or working directory or something like that, and then you can build it up there. But remember, the file name is literally a string, so you could have a variable called file name, and you could change that, and then you know that's how you could maintain the different file names, change them, and then access those files without having to change what's actually written in there. Does that make sense? What is going on there, though? So open, what it actually does is it opens or creates this file, okay, and then it creates a Python object which we can access here. Okay, so you've used Python objects before when you've created turtles, when you have created rects in Pygame and stuff like that. Okay, that's cool. If you've already learnt this, that's awesome. I mean, you know, I've got some medals somewhere if you want one, but you know, whatever. Okay, so I mean, yeah, we obviously got some galaxy brains here. That's cool. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You might pick up some useful techniques here because this is just the start. So I've opened this this file and it returns an object, a Python object, which we can then interact with. One of the functions of the object is close, which we've done there. Okay. Now the function of the object that you're going to be using the most is going to be writing stuff to it. Okay, because we've opened a text file. And we are going to want to write stuff to it. So I can do something like this. File.write. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write the rest of Martin Luther King's stuff there. File.write. That will be the day, not of the white man. So file.write is kind of like print for files, not of the black man. What's the last line? That will be the day of man as man. Okay, so this is kind of similar to printing. But there is a slight difference, right? I'm not going to show you what that difference is right now. What I want you to do is run this program. So it doesn't matter what text you put in here. You can put whatever text you want in there. Just make sure that you've got at least 2 file.writes, okay? And when you run that program, okay, run the program and then double click on output.txt and see what is in there and see if you can comment on what the difference is. There's a major difference between print and file.write. Okay, so have a look at that and see what the main difference is there. Some of you might already be aware of this. Some of you might already noticed it. I'm just interested in what the people are saying. They're not broken up, says Evie. Let's have a look. So you can see with the print, by default, print always puts a new line character on the end of the string that it outputs. But if I look at my output text here now, you can see it hasn't put those extra new lines in there, right? The main difference between print and write is that write will not add those new lines. Your text file is still empty. If your text file is still empty, double check that you're looking at the correct text file. If you've got it open in Notepad or something like that, close it, reopening it. That's something to check. So we can sort of fix this by making sure that we put new line characters on the end there. Remember, \n will add a new line to the text. Okay, so if I run it again now, if I now have a look at output, you can see that has changed, so I've actually got those new lines in there. Okay. So give that a go. Just double check that you are opening the... make sure that when I reopen Notepad and it's still empty, just double check that you're... if you're using this syntax here, the file output.txt should have been created in the same folder that you're running your Python programs from. Okay, that's all the advice I can give you there. So are we sort of like all on the same page here? All got it working? Please let me know if there's errors or issues or you want me to answer a question. I will help you out. Otherwise, there's something that I need to show you. I assume yes means yes, it's fine. Good, thank you. Yep, says Jenny. Anything else? Are we all good there? What's different about You've just anticipated the next thing that I'm going to do. So, for those of you that aren't aware, there is another mode called append mode. I think the best way of explaining the difference between write and append is by showing you an example. So, we've got our file, we opened that file, we wrote a bunch of stuff to it, and then we closed the file. Let's say, though, that we want to add an extra line to the file, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to say file equals open. We're going to open that file again. Same file again, we can just use exactly the same syntax here, output .txt, and we are going to open it in write mode there, and then we're just going to, I've got to make sure I close the file.close, and we are going to write an extra line just to the end. So after Martin Luther King's bits, we're going to say file.write hashtag Black Lives Matter. That's not how you spell matter. There we go. Okay. So obviously you can add your own text, whatever you want. So run that program and then open output.txt and tell me what is weird about it. Okay, tell me if it's what you expected to happen, tell me if it's what you didn't expect to happen, and tell me why you think what happened. Okay, so what we've done is we've opened a file, we've written a bunch of stuff to the file, we've then closed the file. We've then opened the file again, we've written a single line to the file, and then we close the file again. Run that program, in fact I'm going to run it right now. Run that program, open the output.txt, tell me what you see and whether that's what you expected or not. Does mean that something's happened that you didn't expect? Now, Evie says only one thing ran. It might appear that only one thing ran. Yeah. So it's not that only one thing ran. The whole thing ran, but if you look, now the only thing that's in there is that last line, right? That's because when we open in write mode, we overwrite everything that's in the file. Okay? Write mode literally means open this file and overwrite it. Okay? You're not storing anything that's already in the file. Anything that's already in the file gets obliterated. Okay? So those of you interested in writing computer viruses, not that I recommend this, write mode is going to obliterate whatever file you open. So be careful there. Okay. If we want to append, i.e. add something onto the end, what do? We, instead of opening it in write mode, we open it in append mode. Okay. So now, if you just change that W to an A, instead of opening the file in write mode, we are opening it in append mode. And if I run the program now, we should, hopefully, get the full text in there. Because what's happened is we've opened the file, we've written all of this stuff, we've then closed the file, we've opened the file again, but instead of overwriting everything, we're just adding on to the end, and then we write some more stuff, and then we close the file. Okay? Does that make sense? You do not need any specific packages for accessing files in this way. It's all built into the Python interpreter. One thing that if you're still not opening the files properly, or you're not getting anything written to those files, just try changing the actual file that you're writing to. Change the file name, put something different in there. See what you get. Okay. So is this all making sense? Yeah. James says it makes sense. Also, what's the best Star Wars movie? Anyone know? There is a correct answer, but I'm interested to know whether anyone knows what it is. Cool. So that's all making sense. Wicked. Right. So someone tell me, what is the opposite of right? What's the opposite of right? And when I say right, I mean right beginning with yes, the Turkish Star Wars. I understand more than usual. Well, don't put yourself down so much, Evie, but it's good that you're getting it. That's cool. Read mode, yes. With different file names, still nothing is happening. I mean, I can't really, without seeing exactly what's going on there, I can't really help you out. I guess, I mean, you could try closing and reopening. Did you say you're not using PyCharm? You're using just the Python editor. I don't know whether that's making any difference or whatever. Okay, so we are going to read some text now. I'm going to create a new file for this just to prove that there's no shenanigans going on. The Empire Strikes Back is probably the best Star Wars movie, although closely followed by Rogue One. The prequel movies do not exist. Right, and moving swiftly on next, otherwise I'll get bogged down in a discussion about the Phantom Menace, which is the worst thing that could happen. I'm going to create a second file now, and I'm going to call this read text file or something, which is an awful name for a Python file. But I mean, you can do this in your same file if you want to, but I'm going to create a new program. I'm going to call it read text files. Okay, read text files. So the reason I'm doing this is to prove that there's no shenanigans going on. Rogue One was not bad. People that think that Rogue One was bad generally don't understand the nuance in there. To be fair though, Ben, I don't really think you were the target demographic there. It was aimed at sort of like a... it's not aimed at the normal Star Wars demo, but... Hey-o. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Also, Darth Vader in that scene at the end. At least we can agree that that was awesome, right? So we are going to read the file now. Once again, we need to open the file. Yeah, you just don't understand. So we're going to open the file in read mode this time. So we're going to say file. I'm going to open that same file. I'm not going to create a different file. I'm opening the same file. File equals open. That's not how you spell open, Smith. Open output, we called it, .txt, which means that file name, output, was probably a poor choice of file name, but whatever. We're going to open it in read mode, which is specified with a little r there. I'm going to make sure that I close the file afterwards as well. So file.close. Seriously, you have to make sure that you close the files when you open them. I always get it. I mean, it's the same sort of habit like when you are writing an HTML file and you open an HTML tag and then immediately close that HTML tag and then go inside the tag and start editing. This is the same mentality. You open the file, you close the file immediately, and then you go back inside there and do the other stuff. Okay, so but like I said, in a minute I'm going to show you a more efficient way of doing that, where you don't have to remember about closing files. Right now, what we can do here is we can read the whole file and we can print it out. And I'm going to show you one way of doing that, which isn't necessarily the best way of doing it, but I'll show you one way of doing it. Yeah, I was going to show the with syntax in a minute. So let's say we want to print something out. I can create a variable called contents. Contents equals file.read. Now, file.read will literally read the entire contents of the file as text, okay, and then return it as a string. So contents is now a string which contains all of this stuff. After I've closed the file, I'm then going to print it out. Okay, so I'm going to say print contents. Okay, if I now run that program, you can see it's pulled out the contents of that file. No shenanigans here. It's pulled out everything that was written in the file. So what's happened is it's opened this file in read mode. It has read the entire contents of the file, stored that as one massive string, and then it's closed the file. Okay, after the file has been closed, we can no longer access it, but it's alright because the contents are still stored here, and then we just print out that string contents. Okay, now as of Mouse has pointed out, there is a slightly more efficient way of opening files. This works for opening in read mode or in write mode, and it's using the keyword with. Okay, so it's marginally more difficult to get your head around what's going on, but it does mean that you don't have to worry about closing. Okay. Somehow read worked. It could be that the file has been written to, but whatever program you're using to open it is not the. Oh, okay. So you put the text in through Notepad, not the Python. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening there. That's something to look into. Anyway. So instead of saying file equals open, blah 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 blah, and then file.close, what we can do is this with open. And then the name of the file, so output.txt, and in read mode as file. Okay, now this opens a code block, and what it means is inside this code block we're going to do everything related to this file. So we're going to open this file and then we're going to store it as a reference to this object file, which is only going to exist while this code block is being executed. Okay, and then after that it's done. Okay, and then I can print contents. So if I just separate these a little bit. So this program here, this fragment of code, is functionally identical to this fragment of code down here. Okay, they do the same thing. It's always preferable to use the with syntax because you don't run the risk of accidentally forgetting to close the file. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? The difference there and there. I mean, one thing that you do have to discipline yourself with is making sure that you open the file, you do what you need to do with the file, and then you close the file. And then only afterwards do you start messing around with stuff which you don't specifically need the file open for. Okay, now using with kind of forces you to think that way. Because there's a lot of people that fall into the habit of just saying, oh, well, I'm going to need to access this file. So line 1, file equals open, blah, blah, blah. And then line 1056 right at the end of the program, file.close. No, don't do that. Okay. So just to run it through you one more time, what with does is with open, blah, 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 like that. It will open this file and it will store it as a file object here called file. You can call that whatever you want. Okay, I've called it file. Some people call it F, but I think F is a pretty poor variable name. And anything which is part of the with code block will be able to access that file. And as soon as you exit that code block, the file reference is deleted. Okay, so basically those two lines there are functionally identical to these 3 lines here. Does that make sense? It's worth noting it's not just opening files and closing files that you can use with, but it's the most frequently used, especially at GCSE level. All right, cool. So I've shown you how to write single lines to a text file, or rather write big blocks of text to a text file, how to read the entire contents of a file. But we don't always want to read the entire contents of the file and just have a massive block of text. Mine repeated the bottom line at the top as well. I'm not entirely sure what you mean there. I mean, you can double check. If you double click your file, you should find that whatever is stored in the file will also be. I mean, if you have your code written like this, you'll get the output twice. Like if I run this now, you can see I've got it there twice because we're going through it literally twice. So I'm going to get rid of the stuff at the top here. Okay, here we go. So read is all well and good. It's not. I think it's fairly rare that you would want to read the entire contents of a file all in one go, right? What you probably would want to do more frequently is read individual lines from the file. Okay, so what you can do is instead of file.read, you can do file.readlines or file.readline. I'm going to show you what the two different things do. So let's do file.readline. Okay, if I do file.readline, that should just give me a single line from the file, right? If I run that there, you can see it's just read the first line from the file. Okay, now I'm going to slightly change my program here, because what I want it to do is I want it to read the line and then print that line, and then maybe I want it to read the line again and print the line again, just to show you what's actually going on here. So print contents. Okay, so when I do read line, it will read the first line, but it doesn't reset. It sort of remembers the position that it's in, and then when you call read line again, it will read the next line. So you can potentially create a loop that will go through the whole thing and read the lines. There you can see there we've got the first line there, and then we've got the second line there. Just out of interest, does anyone know why there is a blank line in between this line and that line? There is a reason. Is interested. I mean, I'm not going to get mad if you don't know why there's a blank line in between this first line and that line. Anyone that's got a suggestion, if you let me know, I'll tell you how close or far away you are. Yes, is the correct answer. There's a new line at the end of each line in the file, and the print command adds its own new line as well. So it will have printed out, that will be the day not of the white man, plus the new line character, and then the print command will add its own new line on there, and that's why we get the blank line. Well done. Cool! So read line is all well and good, but there was another one in there called read lines. Let's have a look at what that does. Print contents. Can you see what's going on there? Okay, just change your code so it's contents equals file.readlines, and then print the contents. What's happening there? How is it reading those contents? How is it reading that file there? Yeah, it's taking each individual line is being added to a list as a separate item. Okay, now this can be very useful if you have files which are storing blocks of information line by line, like maybe, for instance, you have a program which is storing character stats for a video game, and you're outputting each of those individual stats, and you want to load that character information in later and recombine it. Okay, yeah, you will notice it also includes that \n because that is part of the contents of the line. So you might want to strip that off. You can do that, by the way. You could do something like for line in read line. In contents. Would we do it that way? Yeah, I mean, what we could do is something like this. Instead of printing out, we could do for line in contents, print line, and we want to do everything up to but not including the last character. That will get rid of those blank lines there. Okay. I'm assuming you all understand that terminology there. If you don't panic. I can always do a separate video about it. If you do, then that is cool. But do we get what's going on with the read lines here? Yes, you can do rstrip to remove trailing new line. Or you can do a string slice like that. I don't know which is kinder to the in terms of CPU cycles. I do know that this is quicker to type, so there's a thing. So you could do, yes, line dot rstrip like that. Do I need to? Does it default to? Yeah. So we could do it that way. Either way is fine. You know, it's the same thing. Bum 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 bum. Are we cool there? Yeah. You would also need another chart for the last one because it's Black Lives Matter. Yeah. So rstrip would probably be a better. Yeah, rstrip would be a better way of doing it there. I ran my code and it printed nothing. Does it look similar to this? Have you used read lines? Have you stored it as contents? Do you have for line in contents and then all of that lot there? There is something else I'm going to show you as well. Pretty sure you can do write lines as well. Cool. Is it what's is that? Yeah, it's working, or yeah, it's still printing nothing. Okay. Type error. Built-in function or method object is not iterable. Chances are you have used the wrong brackets somewhere. If something is not iterable, it means you're trying to iterate through it as if it's a list, but it's not a list. Okay. Is there a mode for executing? I'm not sure what you mean by a mode for executing here. Okay. It's still printing nothing. Just open your file. Just make sure that there's actually some contents in the file. Because I mean, you can add your own contents here. So I can save that, and then if I go back here and print it, we get all of the stuff there. If you had a text file with Python code, could you run it through Python? Right, so yeah, sort of. There is a function called eval, which will run. You can run strings, but there's a better way of doing it, which is using something called object serialization, which was the next thing that I was gonna look at. So, but before I do that, I just want to make sure that everyone's sort of like on the same page here. There is loads more to this than what I have shown you, right? But that's up to you to sort of experiment with. But having a look at the Python documentation, you'll be able to get by with being able to read and write stuff like that. Okay, well done for fixing it, Jenny. That's great. There is another thing that I was going to show you actually, because I believe we can do something like this. There is a write lines function, and what that will do is add additional lines to your file here. this is an example, for example, haha. If I just run that program now, and let's have a look at output, it has not actually done what I asked it to do. That's cool, isn't it? Well done. Oh, it's because I'm not running that file, because I'm a moron. Bum, 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 if I have a look at that. But you will notice, if I do write lines, it allows you to add multiple strings all at once, because it's basically writing out the contents of a list. Yeah, and you still have to specify that there are new lines on the end of that. Okay. How do you know when you're supposed to have normal or square brackets? Right. Square brackets are used normally for iterating or accessing items in an iterable, such as a list. Right. Your normal brackets, therefore, specifying functions, function calls, etc., etc. So the fact that you use the square brackets for the string manipulation, that's because strings themselves are iterable objects. They're effectively lists of characters, right? So the square brackets are there for accessing iterables. They are your lists, yeah? And your normal brackets are there for accessing functions. They're also used for defining tuples, which are themselves iterables. So that sort of dichotomy falls apart a little bit there, but whatever. Okay, are we clear? Are we clear on opening files, closing files, the three different modes: read, write, and append, and being able to read lines, read the whole contents of a file, write the whole contents of a file? Do all of those things make sense? Is there anyone who has questions about those specific things? Because I do have a task for you. Append is like write mode, but whereas when you open a file in write mode, it will overwrite everything that's in the file, append mode will add the stuff onto the end of the file. Makes sense. Cool. Right, so I have a task, and I'm going to put this up on the Google Classroom for you. It might take a while for you to sort of work out, but break it down into stages. This is what we're going to do, right? You are going to create a program which is going to... Oh, that's actually a good point. How do you specify which line to read? By default, it will read whatever line the cursor is at, right? But there is a function called seek, which you can use. So I could do file.seek, and the problem with file.seek is that it doesn't seek by line numbers; it seeks by character numbers. So if you specify, if I put 45 in there, that's the offset of the number of characters that it's going to move the cursor along. I'm not actually sure if there's a easy way of specifying, hey, go to line 5 or something like that. Mostly because I don't access files using text access. I usually use object serialization. Do you know what? I'm going to investigate that. How to seek to a specific line. That's something that you could also investigate, and if you beat me to it, I'll give you a house point. How's that sound? So the task that I was going to say is you are going to write a program which is going to store sort of one-line jokes or funny sayings or phrases or something like that. Okay, and it's going to say, do you want to hear a joke or do you want to create a joke? Yeah, and then if you say you want to hear a joke, it's going to read the file and it's going to choose one at random and it's going to display it. And if you want to add one, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you to type it in, and then it's going to store that in the text file. Okay, object serialization is something that we're going to have a look at next lesson, so don't panic about that. All right. So the idea is, I for instance, I wonder if I can show you this. Let's see if I can just add the thing. Gimbal, what's a doodah? Give you an example here. Let's add a window capture, and I want to create a new one. It's not gonna be that one, that one. Okay. So here is my command terminal. Okay. And you can see I've written a program that every time I open my command terminal, I get a new top tip here. Those top tips are stored in a big database, which is just a whole bunch of text files. Well, a single file with a whole bunch of text entries. And when I call them, I get a new one. So if I do fortune viz like this, in fact, if I just do fortune, it should give me a random one. Ever feel like you're the head pin on life's bowling alley and everyone's a rolling strike? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, but those are not my ones. These are my ones here. Driving towards a red light sufficiently fast will cause the blue shift effect, making it appear green, allowing you to go straight over. There's a top tip. Okay. So the idea is that you are going to write a program which is going to ask the user to create these things, and it's going to store them in a text file, right? And you should be able to write it so that it can read that text file, pull one out at random, and display it to the user. Okay? There's nothing in that program that you don't need to that you don't already know from watching this video. Okay? Each month, put a pet mouse down the back of your sofa for a few hours. Hey presto, all loose biscuit crumbs will be eaten. Those are top tips, right? So there we go. Aptitude moo. I'm not sure what that is. I use something called Cowsay. If I do something like this, that might work. I can't spell though. Boom, there you go. See. Anyway, so I will put this task up on the Google Classroom so that it's easier for you to read, understand, and digest. Is there anyone that I mean, do you see what I'm getting at here? Do you have a vague idea of what this program that I'm asking you to create should do? Yeah, it should maintain a list of these top tips or jokes or sayings or phrases, and be able to either display one at random or ask the user to enter a new one, and it will add that onto the onto the list. Okay, so that's going to be your task. Like I said, I will add it onto the Google Classroom. In the meantime, I mean, it's almost the end of the lesson. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we've covered so far? Anyone need any specific help with anything, or are we all generally pretty good? No questions. That's what I like to hear. Certainly better than no answers, which is what many teachers have. I don't have any questions. Is file.readline or lines how to access a random joke? Well, I mean, that's going to be part of it, right? If you do file.readlines, it will pull out every single line in your text file and store it as a list, and then you can look at, right, how do I choose a random one from that list? Okay, I'm not going to tell you how to do that. That's something for you to investigate. But yes, that's obviously one way of doing it. There's multiple different ways that you could do it. Read lines is probably your friend there. Okay. Wicked. Right, if there's no further questions, then I am going to call a halt to these proceedings. 58 minutes. How's that? We finished 2 minutes early. There you go. You get an extended lunch time. How's that sound? Boom. Oh no! Look, I messed up the outro.